Throughout my sales career, I've been asked over and over, what's the single most important selling skill you have to master in order to be great in the profession of selling? Now, on the one hand, it's kind of silly to try to narrow it all down to one single skill, but it's worth considering. Is there one skill that's primary that really matters in terms of being successful as a salesperson? Well, I always had an answer, and that answer was simple. Think about what your answer is. My answer was you've got to be a great listener. Oh, you've got to be fantastic at being able to listen to the customer, the prospect, to determine exactly what it is that they need. And I was completely wrong. Coming up next, I'll tell you why. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Hey, welcome to Sales Untraining, your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Hey, I hope you'll like and subscribe to the podcast. More importantly, if you like what we cover, if you'll share that with people that you know, and we can grow the audience over time as we all tackle the idea of sales training and what's wrong with it. Listen, there's a lot wrong with it, and that's what the whole series is about. But it's the systemic problems that we want to address, and we've got to uncover those, decide what they are, figure out how to address them, and we're certainly going to do that today. By the way, is this your first episode, first time to listen? Man, you want to go back and listen to some really great episodes. Episode number 7, Dave Brock, incredible interview. The last couple of episodes, 12 and 13, Larry Levine, Jeff Bajorek, great guests, good friends. You're going to want to listen to those as well. Just outstanding content from those guys. And I want to invite you to be a part of the podcast as we go along. Just 20 to 25 minutes every week as we share something important from the world of sales untraining. No different this week as we talk about one of the most important topics out there. I mean, when you think about it, I asked the question, what is the most important selling skill that someone has to master in order to be effective in selling? Well, I used to think that it was listening. Unfortunately, I was completely wrong. You know, when you think about sales training is almost always focused on what? Yes, products. Got to learn those products. Is that important? Of course it is. Got to learn the products. But when we put it in a vacuum, as I've described before, we take a week or a few days or a few hours, whatever the case may be, and we train a salesperson on our products. And what are we saying throughout that? We're the best. We've got the best solution. We do it better than anyone else. Our ways are innovative and unique and all of these things. And then we tell them, listen, you need to take this knowledge and go out and sell, right? Yeah, if you're a sales leader, you know, I've done it. You've done it. You've got the knowledge that you need to go out and convince people to buy from us because we're the best. Yeah, sadly, it doesn't work that way because what inevitably happens is people show up to the customer, the prospect, and you've probably heard the phrase, it's been around a very long time. Salespeople tend to show up and, yes, throw up. Talk. In fact, the data tells us that typically the average salesperson on a sales call is talking in excess of 75% of the time. I've been doing this a very long time. That number is very low. At least I think it is. I've been in calls where I want to ask the salesperson, are you going to take a breath? And then the light goes on, right? And they're like, I need to let the prospect talk. So let's talk about you for a little while, Mr. Prospect. What do you think of our company? Yeah, I know I'm exaggerating, but it gets crazy out there because what's happening when people are talking? I'll tell you what's not happening. They're not getting some of the information that they need. You know, everything suggests that they spend all of this time talking. And what are they talking about? They're talking about them, their company, their products, the way they approach the marketplace, and why, by the way, we're the best in the business. In the meantime, typically, pro tip, your customer or prospect is looking at you, but they're thinking about something else completely. They're thinking about the fact that they've got a vendor delivery in 10 minutes and they need to get out of here. And they're thinking that you're just another salesperson and can we wrap this up so I can get busy? And by the way, I'm down a person today and have 2 interviews this afternoon, and on and on and on. And then when they finally catch a little blank space, they're like, hey, well, thanks for stopping by. So, what's your price? What are we talking about here? Tell me you haven't seen it over and over and over again. It becomes a real challenge. If you're talking, you can't be listening. So the most important selling skill is listening? Yeah, I don't think so. The most important selling skill by far is the ability to ask really good questions. Now, you got to be really careful with this one, because what happens is this gets turned into, listen, you need to ask questions. And it gets turned into a list of questions that become nothing more than an interrogation. Mr. Prospect, how long have you been using this particular solution? Did you buy the extended warranty? Who's your prime vendor? Are you under contract? How often do you do preventative maintenance? And on and on and on. And it's just rapid fire, machine gun interrogations. Listen, if you doubt me, do some role play with your people. Tell them to simulate a call that they already have done a little bit of research, maybe in a first call, and they know that they need a particular type of solution. Give them some parameters, some things that they need to know, and then say, listen, what I want you to do is show me what a real sales call would look like if you showed up and began to talk to this customer about their current issue and challenges and how you might solve it. And just sit back, grab a bag of popcorn, and enjoy the entertainment. It's not good, right? The challenge is salespeople talk way too much, but you got to ask yourself why. Why are they doing that? In my experience, one of 2 reasons, sometimes both. Number one, they're just nervous. They're just nervous. They lack a little bit of confidence in who they are and what they do. They don't know their product as well as they should. They've not done their homework. They're in a very brand new sort of situation in which I'm talking to somebody for maybe the first time, maybe the second time, don't have a lot of information, don't have a lot of background. And suddenly to feel comfortable is to begin to talk about what I know. And what I know is product, right? Number 2, salespeople control conversations by talking. When they're talking, they're in control, and they can control the direction of the call with what they say and how they say it. Sometimes it's both. But in my experience, the real underlying cause is they've just never been trained, and they don't know their products and their solutions and their industry and the applications well enough to be completely comfortable with focusing on the prospect themselves. So how do you teach your salespeople to get information? Because let's be clear, all things being equal, the salesperson with the best information typically is going to win the deal. Typically. There are exceptions, but I like my odds. If I've got information that other people don't have, and there is a lot of information that salespeople don't get in traditional selling, in traditional selling, in traditional product pushing, showing up and pushing a product and telling that prospect or customer everything that I know about it, they're not asking good questions. How do you change that? How do you change the dynamic? Again, pro tip, don't start telling them, hey, here's what you need to do. You need to learn to ask questions, because they will turn it into an interrogation, all right? Just simply asking questions is wrong. What we want to do instead is to teach them how to create dialogue. Research indicates that the more back and forth conversation there is, the better it is for how that call develops and how that relationship develops. Very much like if it's all one-sided. Think about the real world. If you're building a relationship with somebody new and you spend the first 20 minutes talking about you and how awesome you are and how great your whatever is, very soon they're going to check out of that conversation and be looking for a reason to leave. Like, wow, look at the time. But we do that in sales calls and we think it's okay. Doesn't make sense whatsoever. Well, one of the things I want to do is come back next and talk about exactly the way you need to structure questions and give you some ideas about how to change the way you're training your salespeople. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. We can hire right 80 to 90% of the time. And one of the things that you need to do differently, significantly differently, is that you need to set very clear expectations in the interview process. What are you hiring them to do? Create that scorecard that says, here's the 3 or 4 things that we're hiring you to do. Figure out exactly what critical skills and competencies they need. Not a laundry list of job description, job tasks, things that they need to do. Not the 22 competencies that you list on your annual performance reviews that we really don't use. I mean, what critical items do you need to investigate? Welcome back, Sales Untraining, your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. So here is the answer to the question. What is the single most important selling skill that any salesperson needs to master in order to be successful in the sales profession? Well, it's not the ability to listen. That's actually 1A. Number 1, far ahead of 1A, but still in the same number, is the ability to ask effective questions that create productive dialogue. Because after all, you could be a world-class listener and not be getting good information. I mean, the ability to listen is completely contingent upon the information that you're getting. So you could absorb it all and get very little to work with. It really comes down to this. Do you know how to ask the right questions? Critically important. So we train salespeople to talk. We talked about it systemically. We're training them to talk. We're teaching them about product and then telling them to go sell. And unwittingly, all we're doing is teaching them to go out and control conversations through talking. And they're not asking productive, effective questions. In order to do that, we've got to change the way we address not only training, but teaching them what kind of questions we have in mind. By the way, have you ever noticed salespeople hate white space? Oh, they hate silence. This is one of the big challenges that comes into the sales training role play scenario. It is, if you want to point this out, participate in a role play scenario and teach them to ask questions. And when they ask a question, pause. Lean back and think a little bit. And watch how long it takes for them to dive in and fill that space. Oh, I don't know what it is, but white space, silence, just absolutely trips up salespeople. The average ones, at least. The pros, the people that routinely crush their numbers, create disproportionate results. Yes, they love white space. You know why? Because they know that the prospect is thinking and considering and looking at options in their mind, and they're completely comfortable with that. They have no problem waiting for the customer to come back, to get intellectually re-engaged, to come back and start to share some of the information that they've been thinking about in that brief moment of time. Instead, what average salespeople do is fill up that white space, that blank space, that silence, with just more of the same. just more talking. Why not? Right? So I want you to think about this. How do you go about training salespeople to ask those kinds of questions? Because just telling them to ask questions is wrong. It's going to lead you down the path of unintended consequences. That needs to be the title of my next book. The Path of Unintended Consequences, How Sales Leaders Create Sales Failure. I don't know if that's going to sell very well, but it's an idea. But there are unintended consequences when we're training them all about products. Unintended consequences. They become product pushers. In the absence of other things in context that teach them everything that we want them to do inside of those sales calls, and without extensive practice, that's what we're going to get. So let's look at a couple of examples of questions and how we might position these and structure these to have the most impact. And really welcome your feedback on all of these and your own examples. You can always reach me, Kelly at bizlockerroom.com. Love to hear your comments and your feedback. But let's start with this one. Here's a question. So, Mr. Prospect, would you like to improve efficiency? Yes. Mildly offensive. I don't know, maybe more than mildly offensive, right? I mean, it's one of those sales questions that we ask people. You know, we go back to the old days. Mr. Prospect, clean water is important for your children, isn't it? Well, yes. And you would like to take care of the environment, wouldn't you? Sure. Well, then, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead and purchase this very expensive water filtration system for your home? And, expectantly lean forward and wait for the next yes, where our questions are designed to lead people down a path of yes, yes, yes. Do I want to buy? Yes. Oh, that's not what I meant to say. Yeah, I mean, that went out years and years and decades ago. Manipulative questioning is out of the question. So I don't want to ask, would you like to improve efficiency? But it's suggested, how about this? How important is it to improve efficiency in your operation? Not at all. We don't care about efficiency, right? Still mildly offensive, a little better than the first one. At least we're asking for an opinion and not just a yes, no, but still, leading them down a path that's trying to get them to come to us. Well, let's go to something quite better. Mr. Prospect, if, as we have discussed, you were able to achieve a 12% improvement in efficiency, how would it impact you and your operation? Well, that's better. At least we're getting them talking about their operation and the impact of a solution. We're not talking about the solution, but the impact of the solution. We're going places, right? But even better yet, perhaps the best, how do you approach the idea of improving efficiency in your product line from your perspective? Is it a people problem, a structure problem, or a resource problem? Well, now I'm asking for their opinion about something that they understand and know about, and that's efficiency in the product line or the project line or whatever they're creating or selling or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different type of operations out there, but what is your opinion about efficiency in your operation? And from your perspective, is it more about people? Is it more about resources? Is it more about structure? And we get them into a conversation, what I call a dialogue. Listen, the real trick, and we'll make this the master pro tip of the day, the real trick is to very carefully listen now to those answers and begin to excavate those answers, to ask more. Tell me more about that. How would that work? Why did you come to that conclusion? How has it impacted you thus far? Have you been successful in this approach in your organization, and on and on? Real dialogue is an exploration of what the other person thinks about any given topic as we delve into something important. It's not casual. It's not an interrogation. It's not yes, no answer questions. It's a dialogue. All right, let's look at another one. Hey, are you planning to replace your current solution? Yes, no, Mr. Salesperson. Well, I don't want to say yes because I know what you're going to do with that. So, it's something we're thinking about, right? The kind of question that everybody perceives as mildly manipulative, trying to get the answer that I want so that I can begin to tell you about our solution. Well, it's suggested that we might ask it about this way. Well, what's wrong with your current solution that you'd like to change? Okay, still going down the same path. At least I'm asking a little bit about your opinion, right? Well, let's go to something better. What circumstances would lead you to believe that replacing your current solution is even an option that you should consider? All right? Much more interactive dialogue, a little more natural in terms of question, but we can get better still, perhaps the best. Considering your current operating budget, where do you see the most profitable opportunities to reduce cost or to improve your productivity? We're talking about them, their business, their challenges, the issue they might perceive. There's a big difference in the types and the quality of questions that we ask. There is no step-by-step guide or book that will tell you exactly what to ask. In my career, stretching back over 30 years in the field and another 15 or 20 in training and developing salespeople, this is an iterative process. You start with a question you think will work, and if it works, then you begin to work with it and you begin to change it. Maybe look at different words and how they impact the way your question is perceived. We get much more into the conceptual field of the question instead of the direct answer question or the data answer, those kinds of things. What we're trying to do is create a dialogue. Why? Because in the middle of all of that dialogue is a treasure trove of information that we mine in order to put into our back pocket to use in the future as we understand exactly what they're looking for, what's important to them, how we can impact their results, and what the impact of not changing their results are now. It's a tricky process, but it's critically important. Sales training is tricky. I mean, when you think about it, sales training is really, really loaded with all kinds of challenges and issues in which we can actually create negative outcomes by how we do our training. Telling reps to ask questions is a recipe for disaster. It just makes the problem worse. What you have to figure out is how to train your people to ask really effective questions that create dialogue. And I wish you the best. We'll see you in the next episode of Sales Untraining.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.